This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by OWC, Jay-Z Microphones, PreSonus, Spectra 1964, and API Audio. So get ready to rock.
I always say that I like songs from people, not for people. Artists that have their own story and their own sound and their own point of view in a lot of creative situations by committee is rarely a good thing. And I'm not taking anything away from four people sitting in a room and writing the next catchy tune, but you ain't writing yesterday with four people.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. If you feel like the fast pace of computer tech has made your studio Mac obsolete, then think again. OWC is your personal studio tech for memory and speed upgrades, DIY installs, and used Macs perfect for recording and mixing. Why ditch your existing computer when you can take your studio far into the future with the Mac you've already got? Learn how to supercharge your studio and find out how awesome your Mac can be at OWC.com so that you can focus on making great music. If you want a digital audio workstation that will give life to your music, from sketching a new idea to composing, editing, mixing, and mastering a finished record, then you want Studio One from PreSonus. Studio One is easy to use with intuitive drag-and-drop simplicity, making it great for beginners yet flexible and powerful for experienced producers. Whether creating beats, recording a band, or composing a blockbuster film soundtrack, you will find everything you need to create your masterpiece. Download your free version of Studio One Prime and get started now at PreSonus, wherever sound takes you. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Eric Masse, a producer and engineer living in Nashville since 2006, self-described as a 3-time Grammy-losing producer, originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan. By the way, translation, Rockstars, that means he was right up there as nominated. Later living in Boston, Eric is a fan of great songs and focuses on producing or co-producing, cutting, and mixing the records he makes. He loves European football and is a Chelsea FC supporter. And he loves giving people the thumbs up. He's giving me double thumbs up right now as I read his intro. He has a beard and almost exclusively wears plain black t-shirts, which he is being true to today in the podcast. After graduating Berklee School of Music in Boston, he moved to Nashville to intern at Blackbird Studio by day and tend bar at night. Massey's first studio was called Cabin in the Woods in Fairview, Tennessee, followed by Idiot Dog on Music Row, and finally, the Casino in East Nashville, where he works today. When a record calls for a larger studio, he loves to work at Southern Ground, which is an awesome place. In 2014, while playing in a golf tournament, Massey met eminent Nashville producer Frank Liddell. That connection led to a collaboration that has borne several projects, most notably Miranda Lambert's 2016 release, The Weight of These Wings, produced by Massey, Liddell, and Glenn Worf, which won the Academy of Country Music's Album of the Year award. Please welcome Eric Masse to Recording Studio Rockstars. Eric, my man.
Hey, Litch. How are you, brother?
Are you ready to rock?
I mean, heck yes.
Heck yes. Oh, you can swear on this too, by the way.
Oh, I can.
Totally, man.
I don't know podcast logistics. You know what I mean? Like, this would get an M for mature.
You know, what it doesn't get is, I don't, whenever I see a checkbox that says, is this good for children? I'm like, no. Just automatic no.
They don't even understand.
This is the recording studio. These are like grown-ups and grown-ups acting like children who hang out in control rooms.
That's right.
And tell horrible stories to each other.
That's right. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's a pleasure to have you here, dude.
Heck yeah, dude.
Hold on, let me get your mic a little closer.
Oh, I can do it. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Check. There we go.
There you go. That's
I've
perfect,
got
man.
proximity effect.
Proximity effect.
Taking hold.
So, I read your intro, but tell us a little bit more about you and like how you got into music to get here, the brief version. But I was surprised to see that you were at Berklee. So I'm from Boston too.
I assume you were surprised just based on my, overall intelligence. But I always liked music. My mom was a singer, not like a professional singer, but I just kind of got into it and then started playing real young and moved out to Breckenridge, Colorado when I was like 19 and, just smoked reefer and played in jam bands. And
your
kind of
mom was
like
a pro singer in Grand Rapids?
She was not a professional singer, but she sang in our church and like whatever, like intramural choirs. What do you call it?
Intramural choirs, I like that.
Local choirs, and she loved it,
Choir club choir.
I think that might be right. Yeah, she was a club choir singer, big club choir. But I moved out to Breckenridge and, just was always playing guitar and music and stuff. And I think I just pulled my face out of like the snow one morning and just decided that I probably needed to do something beyond play Trey Anastasio solos, So like I kind of looked up, schools and stuff to kind of pursue it. And, Berklee's great. And in a lot of ways, people, view it up there as one of the ones or whatever. But for a while, and maybe still it was the case, like it was one of the easier schools to get into, like I didn't have some jazz background or like classical pianist or something like that. I was just a dude who played Trey Anastasio solos, but loved it, and I kind of started recording my bands and stuff like the bands I worked with and stuff like that. And it was like, I remember when I got my first M-Box and how I thought it sounded so good.
Look at that, man.
Look at that thing, man. That is the one. That's pre like flat blue. That's the standing one, dude.
That's OG right there.
That is the
it's
one.
It's even got the original piece of gaffer tape on there
holding it all together. Yeah. It was just like...
I recorded a lot of stuff with that. It was probably mostly spoken word stuff.
Sure.
But I think I must have recorded some music in it too.
And that's what it was, 2 pre's too, right? It was 2 pre's.
I think so. I think it was two mic pre's in, stereo out.
Which oddly enough, and you may be able to tell me more about this. I don't want to throw any shade or whatever, but I see, and I don't think I'm throwing shade, I'm asking more of a question. I see UA coming out with their new DAW, and I wonder if I have to use UA interfaces to run it, isn't that just Pro Tools 7? Like,
right. Are we going back to the original Pro Tools land?
Yeah, where you're like where your hardware is locked to your software, because one of the smartest things Pro Tools ever did is with Pro Tools 9, open up compatibility with third-party converters, because maybe I didn't want to use a 192. I love a 192, but at the time I had a 002. So it's like I either had to get a 002 or upgrade to like HDX and a bunch of 196s. And it was like, that's a lot of money for not even getting to pick my converters. So when they did, I was able to then pivot to like Lynx Auroras or handpick my converters and still have the DAW. And it makes me nervous about the UA thing, only because of their obvious already reliance on the console program. And a lot of people who have studios find that program infuriating, and the way that it like functions with Pro Tools. So,
although, in all fairness, I will say that while I fully understand the need for these consoles, because basically they just give interfaces sort of a zero latency return to the headphones option. I found them
and
all to be
plugins, right?
infuriating.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think in theory, you can also kind of put their plugins before your DAW capture or whatever, so those are all features, but it's weird that you can't not use it. And to me, that's an odd thing. So like, if you have to use console and you have to use UA hardware to run their DAW, are we living in 2006 or am I missing something?
I don't know, man. I mean, the whole business around creating gear for the studio and everything, it just kind of, it's cyclical. It kind of goes through different models and stuff like that. I mean, I think my feeling on that would be that anybody who's making a record is more excited about the fact that all their shit works than anything else.
Big time.
So if this means that new model means like, get this and you got that and you got that and it all talks to each other and it works, people will be pretty thrilled about it.
Yeah, people will be excited about the fact that works just because, the alternative can be just a myriad of error messages and trying to figure out what my signal flow is.
Yeah. And I mean, like, you just made that reference of like using Pro Tools and it used to have its own interface and now you could interface with other stuff. And I'm trying to remember I think some of the interfaces might have talked right to Pro Tools. Some of them might have needed a console thing in the middle. But I like it when I just start a session. I'm like, input 1 equals input 1, done and done.
Big time. Yeah.
And I have a Pro Tools HDX system for that very reason.
Exactly.
I didn't ever want to have to think about it. I just wanted to like...
Pro Tools 1 is the same as input 1 is the same as output 1.
Right. And I don't have to worry about latencies and stuff.
Totally.
I mean, I do in some cases, but generally speaking, no.
Taking it back to 2008, 2009, I did have to deal with latency stuff with when I was tracking. Like that first Rayland Baxter record, I tracked on a 002 with 2 API 512s. And you know what I mean? Like, and I had to deal with latency and, the issues that are early on in that. One thing that has really helped the native engineer is CPU power increasing. Like,
right.
I've got a trash can now with 64 gigs of RAM and, 24 processors or whatever it is. So not all of that to say is I just run 96K native, like at 64 samples of latency,
yeah.
Screaming.
And do you ever feel like you hear 64 samples of latency?
No, I don't even, I've never even had a drummer hear 256, but anything above that they start to, but I don't, 128.
All drummers
64.
hear in the headphones anyway is just click.
We're good. How'd that take feel? Loud.
Well, so tell us, a little bit more about your influence. Like, who inspires you? I mean, I like to ask guests to share an inspirational quote, if you got one, or just like tell us about somebody that sort of inspired you to want to hit the studio and make records. Trey Anastasio, obviously.
Yeah,
Fish,
the
right?
funny thing is that Fish albums never really inspired me to make albums. You know what I mean? I think Fish inspired me to, in the Dead and that whole sort of genre of music inspired me, I think, into the realities of freedom in music and that we can kind of all get real set in these ways of recording verses and choruses and verses and choruses and solo and breakdown verse and chorus and outro over and over and over again.
Bridge?
What about, you didn't even say bridge, man. That's a 6 minor you just went by.
The middle 8.
But like those guys in the Dead, and there was just that freedom. I think that's what I got from them. Aside from like maybe Working Man's and Box of Rain, there's not a lot of Dead and Fish albums that I'm like super huge. Like I go back to for the sonic quality of them. Right. Growing up in Michigan, my earliest like influences that came from my parents that I didn't hate was Motown. And I grew up on Marvin Gaye and Smokey Robinson and the Four Tops and the Temptations and Anita Baker. My dad literally canceled work for 3 days and didn't go into work when Luther Vandross died. I'm just telling you, like, I came from a different side of it, and my way into like country and this side of town is the Dead and the Allman Brothers. And
we just got hit by a tornado, and I think I only stopped working for 1 day.
Yeah,
but I was feeling a lot of pressure at the time.
Yeah, that's right. Feeling a lot of pressure. Yeah. I mean, it's like, but 2 days.
And I just dated this episode because this will come out. Rockstars, we got hit by a tornado a while ago, so.
Oh, okay, great. You just dated this episode.
Yeah.
But, we're not going to tell you if there was another tornado.
No, we record these in advance and then they come out later. But, yeah, man, those are all great influences. And, it's funny, you talk about Fish and the Grateful Dead, you're not rushing back to their records. I'm not so sure they were rushing back to their own records. Sometimes I get the impression that they were excited about hitting the studio as a thing to do, give them something to do during the winter months when they're not on tour.
Totally. And just a vessel for more fun live opportunities. I mean, they made one, do you know their albums a little or whatever? They made one album, Billy Breathes. That record's actually.
Was that Fish?
Yes, and I
Yeah.
think it was Steve Lilly. I forget who made it. It was somebody really that was like that makes albums. You know what I mean? And they have one album. But I mean, beyond that, you know, when I started to get into albums and get into people making albums, I mean, the first two names that jump out that I always went back to were Lenoir and Ethan Johns. I mean, maybe anybody with a Johns for a last name, but yeah, to be honest. But then I just get lost in the Lenoir stuff. I mean, I go back to Teatro, whatever it's called, the record he made on Willie so much, and it's just like a record that's so important to me, and I remembered falling in love with it before I knew why I liked it, you know, like, I don't know. Those guys are pretty influential to me, paired with Motown and paired with the weirdest way into country music. Well, I say that, but then I meet people all the time who got into country music through Cash or The Dead or the Allman Brothers or Skynyrd or something like that before they really discovered, you know, George Jones or before they discovered somebody like that. And I'm still learning about that stuff, man.
Yeah, I mean,
living in this
Brothers,
town.
that's where my appreciation of the major third bend on the G string comes from, you know, like, you know, that comes from that world for sure, you know.
And it's hard, man. I mean, in this town, you're basically a novice until you're getting hired by the Hall of Fame to be like, you know, the expert. There's just so many people here who have lived it, and I'm enjoying it being an important part of my life.
Which is a pretty cool thing about getting a chance to start making records in Nashville. You had these opportunities up here where you get to, even if it's a little bit and you work with somebody who's just been there and done that and lived it, it's such a cool experience.
And it's amazing how fast you learn from those people and how much like they influence what you ultimately will become, you know?
You want the critical details from your microphone to get through to your recording, and the Spectra 1964 101 amplifier provides just that. With unequaled headroom, low noise, and a linear output, irrespective of transient audio peaks. Used by Tom Dowd, Muscle Shoals, Stax Studios, and The Record Plant on records by ZZ Top, Aerosmith, Bruce Springsteen, and John Lennon, Spectra 1964 brings that same incredible sound to your studio with the new STX 600 mic pre with built-in comp limiter. Start making classic records again at Spectra1964.com. Are you sick of microphones that make your music sound harsh and brittle? The new Amethyst mic by Jay-Z Microphones brings you a rich, warm tone with perfect detail using the golden capsule technology. Resulting from 30 years of microphone design, the Amethyst is hand-built using carefully selected parts with Class A discrete circuitry, extremely low self-noise, and an advanced shock mount to make sure your recordings sound awesome. This is my voice on the Amethyst right now. Use the limited time coupon ROCKSTARS to get 50% off the Amethyst mic at jzmic.com. So let's bring one up. You did a track with Willie Nelson. Tell us about that, and what were some of the things you felt like you picked up from that?
Oh my God. I'm going to tell you why I put that in there because of how that song got made. So Frank Liddell, who I make a lot of records with, and we are great, great friends. He is really a big song guy and has been good friends with Bernie Taupin for a while, who, you know, wrote all Elton songs or whatever, or the lyrics for him. And he's told me he always wanted to make a country Elton record with some really good people. And they got talking, and then it all happened, and then the label got involved. So then, you know, eventually it's what artist is going to do what. But him and I did one for Miranda, and him and I did one for Willie. And, you know, getting Willie in the room's a challenge, you know, tracking him down is a challenge. And I'm saying it's a challenge when you're talking to his manager, you know, it's like, it's a challenge. Like, and so we got in there with just a great band, Glenn Worf, Matt Chamberlain, Frank Rishi, Jed Hughes, Chris Coleman, like, and we got down the road on it. A great, great artist came in, Waylon Payne came in and kind of was the Willie placeholder, you know, and
like that. Like making movies, you need a placeholder.
Totally, kind of get in
stage,
there,
right?
sing way off the beat. You know what I mean? And we cut it. And we did this at Southern Ground, and we cut everything, and then we waited, and we just didn't know when Mark Mark Rothbaum was going to say, Willie can do it this day or this day. And we waited, and a couple months went by, and Frank and I were on a road trip through Montana, like doing some camping and hiking with some other friends and stuff. And we were sleeping in a tent, and we got a call that said, "Hey, can you be in Austin tomorrow?" And it was like, we're literally 4 hours from an airport in the middle of the mountains. Well, I think it's the only time we can probably do it, And
welcome to the music business.
Welcome to this business. So luckily, because I knew that this was just so at the thing, we were hiking in the woods, and I had my glyph with me, like just in case. So I had my glyph. There's one.
Meaning you had your hard drive full of the tracks.
Yeah, I had the hard drive with the tracks.
Yeah.
Just because I was sleeping with it at that point. And
people are going to think like glyph is like your mountain climbing gear.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's my Sherpa.
That was your like custom tent.
Yeah,
right?
exactly, dude. You should see this thing. Sleeps 14.
They're the best hiking boots you've ever tried.
So we get sort of one of our assistants to get some plane tickets locked in, but there was such short notice. We flew out of Billings, and I went through Salt Lake City, and he went through Denver on 2 different planes, one seat each. And we got to we both were going to Salt Lake, and then it split. We got to Salt Lake, both of our planes were canceled. So we were supposed to get in at 10 a.m. or at midnight and then go in there the next day at 10 a.m. Now we missed our flights, and we're going to get there at 10 a.m. in Spicewood, where Willie's studio is 45 minutes outside of Austin. We're coming in separately. I land, and we have a car service blast out there. The dude is just flying down the road. I get in there. Frank's an hour behind me. I get in there, get the thing all set up, kind of tracks, just master tracks pulled up, blah, 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 because I didn't have to set up any mics for Willie. I don't think those have been moved for 45 years.
Right,
Literally,
right.
That's just what it is. The Baldwin amp and the...
Did you work with Steve Shady?
Steve Shady. He was there.
Steve,
yeah. Steve Shady
was
was
on
there.
the show too.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to you, Steve.
Steve Shady, what up? Couldn't have been a cooler guy.
Could the real Steve Shady please stand
Yeah,
up?
real Steve Shady, please. And he,
He's sick of that joke. Sorry, Steve.
To his credit, I can only imagine A, what I smelled like, B, what I looked like, and C, what I was saying. But he was just like, push the faders up. We're cool, man. All that to say, get faders pushed up. We're there. I hear a door open. Frank walks in. Frank gets there. This is not an exaggeration. 30 seconds later, in the other door, Willie comes in and goes, "Hey, y'all, sorry to keep you waiting."
That's great, man.
It's like I've been here freaking out, and Frank has literally been here for 30 seconds.
That's awesome, man.
And if Willie had walked in and Frank wasn't there and I wasn't there, he would have just turned around, no problem, and go out and played some golf, and we were back on the clock.
That's a trip. So he's so super cool about it.
Once he was in there,
whatever,
man, he played it a couple times, and I thought, sometimes you get 3 or 4 takes and he's kind of ready to get out of there.
Yeah.
And he played it 3 or 4 times singing and playing, and then he played it on acoustic 2 or 3 times, then he sang it 2 or 3 times, and then he hung out with us for a little bit.
Nice.
Hung out with us.
Do you remember any good jokes? I know he's famous for great jokes. That's putting you on the spot. There,
I think he did have a couple of one-liners because Annie, his wife, was there, and I think he had a couple of one-liners. I don't remember. Anytime we all like to think that we're cool into the face of cooler, but sometimes it's a bit euphoric and you're not really listening to a word he's saying.
Right. Also, I may have heard that hanging out with Willie Nelson is the kind of hangout which you're likely to forget, in quotes, afterwards, depending on, things that accompany the hangout.
So hard that I forgot immediately.
Yeah, there you go. Right on, man. Well, so talk a little bit about, if you can think of one. Sometimes I like to ask, share a story of an important failure in the studio. So here you are recording Willie Nelson, but not everything was, I guess that was almost a failure right there. But not everything's all, roses and perfect sessions on the way up. Do you remember some learning sessions where you
like a real 35
disaster?
I've been fired from. basically why don't we stick to the ones that were successful? I'm just kidding. No, but I mean,
or anything that became a real good learning experience.
The failures that you, and I think everyone has in the studio, are just, people being on different pages. You getting in there and thinking you're going down this road and it ends up not being that road, or you end up getting pressure from somewhere outside of the room you're creating with. And the failures in my career are as standard and plentiful as you could imagine. It's just looking and failing and looking is what my career is.
Just keep pushing through.
Man, it's like our job is, our lives are Mondays and Saturdays. That's it. I sometimes have 25 Mondays in a row and then 10 Saturdays. You know what I mean? It's just like I'm either on or I'm off. And I
like that.
I work for you, and sometimes they get away from us, man. It just gets away from us, And when I say get away from us, I don't mean like it drives off a cliff. I mean, it drives into mediocre Americanaville, mediocre Countryville, mediocre, however long your marketing budget is how long people are going to talk about this Recordville. You know what I mean? Like I care tremendously about great songs and artistry. And yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about the failures. There's just so many. I mean, and I hate being specific and like talking about like a specific record with an
throw somebody under the bus. No,
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
No, that's cool. It's a good reminder. It's like you have an appreciation for songwriting. It's one of those lessons around songwriting. You have to write a bunch of bad songs to get to let them get out of the way so the good ones can arrive.
That's right.
And I think it's true of studio stuff too. Something that I experience sometimes, which is so frustrating, but it's just part of the process, are those sessions where you work so hard on it and you're like, I'm really kicking ass. And then you come back later and you're like, what the fuck, man? This is not kicking ass at all. This other thing I did in 2 minutes kicks ass. And this thing I spent so much time on is not, it's struggling.
Totally. I mean, we, as engineers and producers, we have an ability to critically listen and find flaw to fix. I'm going to fix this guitar player. I'm going to get in here and I'm going to fix this drummer. And there's a reason why, shit that snapped to the grid all sounds the same, because it's all the same grid. It's the same computer. And it's like, you don't hire Matt Chamberlain and then make him a computer. You know what I mean? So like those imperfections, I've done it myself where I thought I could fix this into being great. And a lot of times I go way past it. You know what I mean? And like,
yeah.
I'm inspired tremendously more when you can hear humanity.
It's funny. That goes certainly for editing and over editing and manipulating the audio, because we can, in a DAW and a Pro Tools or whatever. But I find sometimes it even goes for just dialing in the sound.
Big time.
You know what I mean? It's like, because you got all these great tools, you can now sculpt the sound. You're like, oh, that sounds so badass. And then you come back later and you're like, what? Why is this like not happening? And
to even take it a step further, I've seen that sculpting that ultimately will involve me coming back and going, what have I done? But also while I'm sculpting, I'm looking at an inspired band just sitting there waiting. And I always argue, like, it's not like, and I don't want to shit on this company, but it's not like we're all using like Behringer 16-channel mic pre's to run our studio. You've got great gear and great microphones. Like, and you know how to place them. So like, if you can handle that, just get the fuck down the road, man, because like those same tools are there after we record it too. And if I can use an EQ incredibly before I cut it, I can use it after. And I don't necessarily mean just cut it and we'll solve it and mix. I mean, like, get it sounding great, be excited, but then like try to really get that band and that artist to believe in what's happening around them. And the rest of it you can work out later. I mean, you can nudge a tom or you can whatever, comp a bass lick that you like from another pass more,
Yeah, it's always so much more fun when you are recording something that the performance and delivery, it believes in itself enough and it's excited itself enough that all the other concerns about whether it's good or has issues or problems to fix just go right out the window.
Big time. Because you're cooking at that point, And I mean, and I think that goes the same for like quirky ideas, like, an MS pattern or, or whatever, like, like all that stuff's cool as long as it's like not what you're doing.
Right. You're not there to do that.
I'm not there to mic this.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I am, but like, it's like, like bigger picture. We're here to make a Beatles record or a Pink Floyd record or a Tracy Chapman. I mean, it's like whatever, but like, I love being an engineer, and you and I have had these conversations. Like, you're a song guy too, though. It's like you're not in here with an oscilloscope. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like,
I got one somewhere, but
totally,
I think I let it go finally.
I have one, and I think it probably works, but it hasn't been turned on in like 6 years.
Honestly, I really loved my oscilloscope. But you know why? Because you could do that thing called the Lisa Zhu pattern.
Is that the one? Oh, is that the slow one?
You put the X and the Y in differently, and then it makes these crazy circles. And you just put it up where everybody can see it.
Yeah.
That was what it was really
and it's like,
for.
I mean, he knows what he's doing. Look, he's got this fucking graph thing.
It looks cool. Look how good our music looks. When you hit that sustaining bass note, it does a big, like, it looks like a mouth opening. Wow. Come on in. So tell us about your studio and some of the way that you've set it up to be able to capture bands like this and really like make it quick and capture the moment. Like, are you using a console?
Yeah, I use an API box, which I think I have one of the first ones because I pre-ordered it before they came out because it was so perfect for my studio. I don't know if you're familiar with that console.
Yeah, API the box.
Yeah, the API the box. And
is yours the 8-channel version?
No, I have like serial number like 21 from like the first box ever. Like Jordan, who now works for PMC, built my box. Jordan in Nashville, who works for PMC.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you're like, and it turns out the very first one they made, they put 96 channels in it.
Totally. And it's
awesome.
Like, oh my God, you've never seen it. But why it worked for me is because it's not really a console if it's like the first thing you buy, because it's got 4 input channels, which is great. 4 pre's is great.
And I think now it's up to 16, right?
Or 8, right?
Did they really? Maybe it's 8 on the 8 input channels on the left and 16 returns
exactly.
on the right.
That's what it is. And that's what made me buy it was the 16 on the right, because the 4 channels on the left, it's 4 312 pre's, a couple of 500 slots, really cool. It's basically like a little mini section of a 1608. But the 16 channels on the other side was great. I had already run a 16-channel dangerous summing amp, like the 2-bus LT or whatever it was called, but it was pretty limited in functionality. It was just solo or mono, stereo 2-channel or 2-channel mono. So it really limited all my analog gear that I owned in mixing. It made me kind of relegated to 2-mix stuff and taking a chance and putting an inline compressor on just an analog channel with my gain stage being the output of the 1176. It's a little riskier, So what the 16 channels did for me was they've got 4 cents, they've got insert points, they've got faders, they've got pan pots, they've got all this stuff for me to re-engage my studio at a mix level where I was since not able to. So then that 16 channels was great because then I had an Aurora 16 in, 16 out, and I already had 20 analog pre's. If you don't have the pre's already, it's kind of hard for the box to be a whole studio. But if you've got 10 pre's already, it is your whole, it can totally.
Right, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because so when you got the 4-channel box, 4 mic pre's, you can do some pretty cool stuff with
Really
that,
cool,
but it might be, might not be enough for
multi-track
doing
recording a whole
multi-track
band.
and everything,
Yeah,
obviously.
exactly.
And then even with the newest one with 8, it's again awesome, but
you're going to still want 8 more pre's, probably.
Yeah, you might want 8 more pre's. But I know that they also, you can set that up where you could use an additional box. Or whatever,
I do have one. So that was my next.
that way.
That was what I did. So I had the Aurora, so I had 16 in, 16 out, and it was great. But, even that can be limiting when you're tracking 8 people all live, full band, So I got the dangerous something else, 2Mix Plus or something like that. I don't know, because the box has a program sum in button. So literally you just get another 16 channel summing amp and it has a XLR left and right input on the back of the box that I sum, and it all gets phase aligned in the center section of the box. And the big thing, the 16 channel summing, and then the center section of the box is a good reason to buy a box, because the center section is identical to the center section of a 1608. So if you like, it is crazy. And I don't know how much it is now. I think when I bought it, they gave me a little bit of a deal or whatever. I think it was like $12.5K or something.
Yeah, I think it's more than that, but
yeah. So maybe it's like 14 or 15 or something.
Like that,
but like for 15K, you're essentially getting an 8 or a 16 channel output section of a console with full functionality, a console master section, and then 4 pre's that are 4 channel strips and 2 of the slots. But granted, I'm sorry that I keep speaking in box 1 terms, because it's what I have. I realize that they have the box 2 now, which was basically the input side is everything I'm saying doubled.
yeah.
I think it's even got 4 slots. It might have 8. All slots might be open. I'm not sure at the top, because mine has 2 550As fused to channel 1 and 2 on the input side.
No, I think it's all customizable. So you can choose what you want to put in all those slots.
That's great.
So you can choose, you can put mic pre and EQ and, whatever else.
That's great.
Whatever you want to put up in there.
And then I just have a pretty good sized live room, and then 2 ISO booths, and then 2 ISO amp lockers. So you can kind of set up, electrics and bass and drums all happening in the live room without any bleed, except for the drums that are making noise. And then, in the ISO boost, you can put some sort of string player or acoustic player or something, and then a vocalist in another booth, and kind of cut it all live without any bleed,
Nice. If you're ready to upgrade your studio to the famous sound of API's large format consoles, then you're ready for the Box, a small format console featuring the same analog circuitry and original 2520 op amp design that has made API famous for 50 years. Record through 8 world-class mic pre-channels, mix through 24 smooth as glass faders, and blend mics, analog effects, and parallel compression at the speed of electrons rather than the speed of your computer latency. Upgrade your home studio to legendary status with The Box from APIaudio.com. What kind of footprint would you describe for the studio, just square footage, as far as if you know or want to talk about it?
It's 1,200 square feet.
1,200, all right, because just in case the rock stars are trying to envision how much space do I need if I want to have ISO rooms?
Sure, and
that's cool.
the ISO booths are in the corner. There's one in the corner of in the control room looking out into the live room. And then there's one in the live room looking out into the live room. And they're kind of in corners, so you can kind of, but they're not big. I would say that one's sort of half of an octagon and then it backed into a wall, and it's probably, 4 by 5. And the other one's probably 5 by 6 or 7. They're pretty small.
Right on. Well, let's talk to the rock stars a little bit more about the, why you would want to have a console set up like that. So obviously, the idea of summing outputs of an interface, summing them analog. I think the first reason that showed up on our radar was this could sound better than summing it together inside the computer, And there may be that discussion about it. But I think there's much more to it, right? Because you can actually, now with the aux sends, you can start to do these things that you couldn't really do
big time
otherwise. For example, can you do some parallel treatments while you're tracking too? Or is it mostly just in the
Oh, while I'm tracking?
Yeah, I mean, like, is there a way where you can hear the drums? Maybe you can because you're hearing the drums come back through it, but you can do like parallel drum compression and things like that and hear that while you're recording?
On the console, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You can absolutely
box, right?
like insert stuff and output it to another fader while you're tracking and print that fader too. Like all that's fully capable. You know, I'm not, fully immersed into like the phase aligning and like how a master section works, but I know that there's something that, you know what I mean? Like it all kind of, if you're coming out of the program bus, it all kind of happens. You know what I mean? But, I don't do as much parallel compression in tracking. That's why I'm sort of like thinking about it, because I do a lot of parallel compression in mixing.
Right. Okay, dig it.
Yeah.
That's something that I've tried to explore more of, is like more treatments on the drums when I'm tracking. But parallel stuff is the one where I'm always like, well, unless I'm going to use my console, and it's kind of sort of set up for that, but not really, you know?
Right.
Then there's not a way for me to do that. And that's, I think, missing. I think that would be a really cool thing to be able to do.
Big time.
For example, if you're going to treat the drums a certain way and then like now you got the drum sound, why wouldn't we want to hear that when we're recording it?
And when you're in a big studio, we always do it. You always get like your drum shit mic, you know what I mean? That you've got over in the corner just smashed through something, you know what I mean? That's just like, when you're like, you put it in there and you're kind of like, oh,
yeah, that sounds cool, man. That sounds exciting now. But again, just to kind of keep honing this point, just for the rock stars, so they make sure that everybody follows us. If you are recording all of your drum mics straight into Pro Tools on multi-tracks, and then within Pro Tools, you wanted to go, or whatever DAW you're using, you wanted to go, let me take the drum shells and we'll bust that over to a parallel compression, kind of a kick snare bus or something like that, and pull that up on a fader. Now you're screwed because you're getting a delay.
Delay compensation.
Yeah, you're getting delay.
And it's all plug-in dependent at that point. You know what I mean? And that's why still delay compensation to me, it's so great in mixing, but it's kind of an illusion in tracking. You can't really use it because like if you have a 190 sample plug-in on there, everything else has got now an extra 170 samples of latency that is tracking to unreal time. Like it's like, because you're getting that delay, so you're playing to that delay. And then you take that plugin off, and the thing you just played is now 190 milliseconds off the beat,
Things that make you go,
Literally. Delay compensation in mixing, killer. Delay compensation in tracking, be careful.
But that's the beauty of using an actual console.
Yes.
When you use something like the API box, is you can actually bring your faders up. I guess, like, how would you just hear it in real time? But you can
also electricity moves a lot faster than a computer's ability to process the fake electricity.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it takes a lot longer to do ones and zeros than just for electricity to go down a wire.
So tell us anything else about your studio. You want to talk about stuff, that's any favorite mics, or you use a tape machine or something? I've
got a JH110 quarter inch that I will mix down to if your album is like really wanting that tape warmth.
Nice. I
can hear it, man. It's warm.
Love tape. I haven't been using my 110 much.
Yeah.
Rarely fire that up, but I do use the 16 track.
Awesome.
When the time's right.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the tracking to tape is, I love it, and in a lot of ways it makes our job 100 times easier.
It kind of does, man. There's like when I listen to the tape records I do and I play it back, I'm like, man, that's all coming together nicely.
All coming together, and if it's not, I can't really do it.
So we already got the tape sound on there.
I'm gonna do like a master, edit or something, like splice a take or something. But I mean, like there's a simplicity to tape that kind of like you were saying, takes like that zoom in, that sort of like focusing on the sound or the process. It's just kind of, we're just making music, man. And you're kind of like relegated to using your ears to decide.
Yeah. Well, let's be fair though. Simplicity to tape. A tape session is more complex than a non-tape session, because now we have to align the tape machine. You can't do all the stuff you're used to in Pro Tools.
Yeah, but let me preface that by saying, not easy to do tape, but there are things about it that you are limited by. Like you can't sit there with an artist and listen to 86 takes of a vocal.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
there's ways to do it. Unfortunately, I've thought of ways to do it. Which means now I'll have to do that anyway. But if you're staying on the tape, you certainly can't do that.
Right. You know? And that's sort of the hybrid, right? Nowadays, a lot of times it doesn't stay on tape for long, right? It kind of like happens and then it ends up in some DAW to kind of like edit, you know? And
so for me, for example, if I was going to record the tape, 16 tracks with the band the mics would go through the tape machine. The tape machine would be an input. The outputs of the tape machine would go straight into Pro Tools so that we can hear it. And the funny thing is when I'm doing tape sessions, I'm pressing play in Pro Tools to trigger the click if it's needed, but I'm not actually recording anything in Pro Tools.
Oh, right.
It's just rolling along an input.
Yeah, totally.
And then the tape machine's doing all the recording. And then once we've got like 4 takes, we just
then
rewind
you just real time
tape,
print it in,
transfer them all in, and then we have to take each one and kind of like line it back up to the grid if we need.
Sure.
I mean, we're not in that case because the tape's free rolling against Pro Tools. We're not really treating it like a grid.
No. It's almost just like a way to like calibrate effects or anything, you know.
Yeah. Or it's like you're lining it up so that you can at least comp between those takes, and like the beginning of the chorus one is about in the same location for each take.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah. But then, there are some tricks to do where, like when you're overdubbing, after that point, then you can do the tape bounce trick if you want to get really complicated with it.
What's that?
So the tape bounce trick, you take your channel, your mic channel coming in, and then you mult it, and you send one of those mults over to a channel on tape.
Oh.
And you have the tape in repro, so that there's a delay on the sound coming off the tape. And that goes into a track on Pro Tools, which is in record but muted. So you don't hear it yet. And then you take the other mult and you go into a second track in Pro Tools and you record that one at the same time. So you record, if you're doing one vocal take, you record 2 tracks in Pro Tools. And then you listen to the one that's going straight into Pro Tools.
And that's where they're getting their headphones. Right.
But you're not hearing the one that's bouncing back with a delay off of tape. And when you're done recording, then you go back in, let's say you did 5 vocal takes, you just go to each one and you measure the amount of delay.
And literally just do an exact nudge.
It's always a consistent amount of delay. It'll be like so many samples,
Totally.
And you measure that before you get going. You just send a click over to it or some, drum hit or something and just double check what it is.
Yeah, you're like a tape Yoda compared to me, man. You just told me what a lightsaber was. I was working on Tatooine, dude.
You're like, man, lightsabers used to be fun until you just explained the workings of a kyber crystal or whatever.
That's good. No, cool. I mean, my studio's got all the, standard gear. I've got some Neve 1073s, and I use a really nice old U47 on a lot of guys, and I use a really nice old 67 on girls. I've got
let's pause right there. Why a 47 on guys? Why a 67 on girls? Is there some quality to each mic that makes it good for those?
Yeah, I feel like 67s and guys, they have a tendency to sound a little bit boring because I think that where a 47 really excels in some sort of like top end shelf that really makes a guy sound full and brilliant. A 67 kind of makes a guy just kind of lay there. And on the flip side, there's like a body to a 67. The 67 I have, there's a body to it that like really adds, for lack of a better term, some balls to a girl. And the 47 kind of the 47 sounds better on both than the 67 does, but the 67 typically sounds better on girls to me.
So it's kind of like the 47 adds more of the top to a guy's voice or something like that.
Exactly right.
And the 67 adds more of the body and the bottom to the girl's voice.
The ones I have specifically, and granted, I've rented, 47s from Rolf or something like that, and I'm like, this one's so much different than this one. They're all so different, but the ones I have, typically that, and I've just got a bunch of cool old RCA ribbon mics, KU3A and BK5, and then a mic, I don't know what it's called, but everyone calls it the paintbrush.
The paintbrush? Oh, I don't know that.
It's like an old RCA mic, and it's got like this little flat swivel head on top. It's really weird, but it sounds really good.
Groovy. Well, let's pause for a moment. We'll come back in just a few for the jam session. And I want to remind you, rock stars, that the stuff we're talking about and a link to videos and the music that Eric has worked on is in a video playlist. Just click through the show notes It'll take you right there and you can go check it all out. And we'll see you in just a minute for the jam session. You know what it feels like when inspiration hits and you want to capture your great song idea, but then the studio gets in the way and it's just no fun anymore. Wouldn't it feel awesome if you could simplify the process of producing your music from inspiration to final masterpiece? PreSonus Studio One is a powerful digital audio workstation that helps you compose your music with a complete collection of virtual instruments for keyboards and drums, MIDI tools for hip-hop, EDM, and film, a flexible sketchpad with chord charts and key recognition for songwriting and arranging, and classic effects pedals and amp simulators for guitar and bass. With 37 high-quality effects plugins, integrated Melodyne, and drag and drop flexibility, you can easily edit and polish your mixes. And Studio One is the only DAW with a built-in mastering studio so that you can take your record from writing to radio ready all in one place. Download your free version of Studio One Prime and get started now at PreSonus, wherever sound takes you. If you're using a Mac in your recording studio and you're tired of feeling like the studio setup you worked so hard to create is becoming obsolete too quickly, then Otherworld Computing is the solution for you. OWC can help keep your existing Mac and studio current and relevant so that you can make great music. Whether you need to upgrade your RAM, install an SSD, add more connectivity, or simply find a great used Mac, you can get the most mileage out of your studio with OWC. Offering a vast library of DIY install videos, 24/7 friendly support, and free shipping in the US on most items over $49, there's no need to get frustrated when you can achieve the speed to create and the capacity to dream at OWC.com. Hey, rock stars, we're back now for the jam session. My guest today is Eric Masse. What up, dude?
Jam session.
We're going to jump in, talk more about the gear in your studio and making some great records with people. So you ready to
Love
jam?
it. Let's do it.
Sweet, man.
I'm ready to jam.
You were just mentioning when we took a pause there that you have more than just the box, the console, right? Do you have like external lunch boxes of mic pre's and EQs as
Big
well?
time. You know,
So tell us about some of those, because like there's going to be a lot of us listening who are like, I've heard of API, but I don't actually know anything about what the details are.
I'm like, there's a couple of things in my life where I was the perfect age for. One of them is video games. When I was 9 or 8 years old, the Nintendo NES came out, and it was like the first, like besides Atari, but like the first big, like you can play video games from your house. It was like, so now that it's progressed, I feel like I've progressed with it. Same thing with API.
Have you finally left the house, by the way, just to come over here for this interview?
Totally. Right? It was like, I was like, oh my God, the sun. You should see how pasty my skin is. I haven't been outside in years. API is kind of the same way because I went to Berklee from 2002 to 2006. And, I had a 002, which is the 002 I literally had when I cut Rayland's record 10 years later or whatever. But it started out as like, when I first got into school, even in 2002, 2003, studios and like gear. And it was all sort of behind this wall that you needed a pass card to get through, and it was always like, it wasn't yours. And
right.
And slowly but surely with the invention of, DAWs and affordable converters and stuff like that, it started to become to your house. So when I was a sophomore at Berklee, API came out with and invented the API lunchbox, and born was the 500 series world,
Kind of a big, important moment.
Big time, because when you think about what that has done for not the Electric Ladylands and the Hensons of the world, but of the yous and me's of the world, it really started to become possible. So I saved up a bunch of money, and I went down and bought a lunchbox and 2 API 512Cs. And now I have 12 of them in 2 lunchboxes.
So break it down, just because there's going to be a lot of model numbers that go.
Yeah.
Remind us what each model number is.
Sorry, I literally do that stuff. Okay, so an API 512C is an API mic pre. It's sort of their flagship 500 series thing,
What are some of the features that it has? I mean, we got some buttons on the front, right?
Yeah, pretty simple in the sense that it's only got an input pot. It doesn't have an output pot, which is cool because you can drive the input pretty hard, but you can't drive it and then baby the output, And then it's obviously got phantom, it's obviously got polarity, and then it's got a pad, and it's got a front end 1/4-inch high Z jack going into a DI.
And that's a big important thing too.
Yeah, that's great. Because I mean, literally any keyboard, any bass, anything, you're into an API. But it's weird because when I think about those API purchases, I remember making them in 2s all the way up to 12. So that's when I had 12 mic pre's, API mic pre's, and then the box came out, which was 4 more mic pre's, which gave me 16, and then a 16-channel summing amp. It was sort of like, there's my gear. You know what I mean? Like that's my, and I've got a bunch of other not API pre's and stuff, but I mean, there are 16 API mic pre's in my studio that are kind of at the forefront of the sound of things that I make, And I mean, I've got a bunch of, 5500s and 5500s, which are a stereo 4-band parametric equalizer. And then I also have a 2500, which is a big famous flagship stereo compressor.
Oh, the 5500 is a stereo
2500, yeah, or the 5500.
Oh, sorry, the 2500 is a compressor.
Yeah, 2500 is the stereo bus compressor that's actually in the center section of Legacy and Legacy
when
Plus
you said
consoles.
50, I was thinking about the 550.
There's so many 50s in there because or like 50s and 20s and 25s and stuff. I think it just boils down to that op amp that they have in everything, that 2520 op amp, which is kind of like the centerpiece of the API sound.
So you have some of the EQs as well, right? So talk about some of the what are the bands or some of the features of those different EQs that you really like?
It's a pretty simple EQ because it's all fixed. It's all fixed. So each band has, between 5 and 7 fixed frequencies, and then a 2 dB step cut and boost that go up to 12. So you can boost it from 2, 4, 6, 8, 12 and the same on cutting. And then like for the low one, I think it's like, 50 hertz, 80 hertz, 100 hertz, 180, and then like 240, or you know what I mean? It's like fixed points. It's, which is different than say like a GML 8200 where it's just sweeping. I mean, I could literally do 438 hertz or I could do 442 hertz. You know what I mean? Whereas like the API is fixed, and it's a really great additive EQ.
All right, so we have the 3-band EQ.
I think is that the B or the A?
That's the 550A, right?
Yeah, so I think that I have the B then.
Okay, all right. And I'm looking at it on the screen right now, and so we've got like the highs go from. Goodness, I'm trying to read it.
Does it go all the way up to 20 or does it go to like 18?
I think it's like 2.5K up to 20K.
Yeah, cool, yeah.
And then the mids, 200 up to 4K. Is that what it is?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And the lows about 30 hertz up to 400 hertz.
Yep. So it gives you a good, amount. But like what you can't do with it is like, say, cut at 500 hertz and cut at 400 hertz or so, you know what I mean? Or something that kind of overlaps or whatever.
Right.
But for me, the way that op amp kind of handles gain and stuff like that, the API EQs to me have always been more of the additive option, whereas something like a plug-in version of the Massenburg DesignWorks EQ offers such great subtractive options, whereas the additive options are so clean, it's almost kind of like, is this thing broken?
Right. You're just boosting it like, when is it going to sound bad?
Totally, dude. But it's such a great subtractive, where I've found that when you cut an API, it's not that it doesn't sound better, it's just, there's not really bandwidth selection, you know what I mean? It's not like I can highlight a super sharp cue or not,
You're not doing surgery.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
And, you started out the conversation with that idea, which is like, we were talking about this idea of over-engineering the sounds, and it's like, so often it's like, get the mic placement going, get into recording, do some subtle things and get recording as fast as you can. And it's surprising how many times you come back later and you're like, man, that just sounds great.
It just sounds great.
A room full of musicians playing well together.
Totally. And that, and that's a big part of it. And you and I are both fortunate to have a Rolodex of great players. when I lived in Grand Rapids,
Do you still
Michigan.
have a Rolodex though?
Yeah, it's really cool. Like I flip through it and I just say like, tell him I'm busy.
Do you lean back in your squeaky leather office armchair?
JB, let me tell you something. I got some.
All right, so let's see what other. So the 3-band EQ I know is great. And then let's go over here and see. We've got the 550B, which is the 4-band EQ. Yeah. Do you have those as well?
That's what I have.
That is what you have. Okay,
I have the two rack-mounted ones I have are the 5500Bs, which is the stereo, like 1U version of
550s.
The 5500 is the stereo version.
Oh, I got
There's
you.
like a stereo.
My bad.
Yeah. But to your point, I also have a pair of mono 550As because they come on, they're locked in on channel 1 and 2 of the box. So I actually have 6 channels of API EQ.
And then those 550As also have the filter switch, which is pretty
Big
cool.
time.
So you can
and the
cut
bell
your lows out
shelf curve or whatever.
or cut the highs out.
Totally.
How often do you use the high filter to cut the highs out?
Does it do both or just highs, does it say?
Let me pull it back up. I thought it said that it did both.
Oh, yeah.
2 switches. You have the LF, which I think stands for low filter, and then HF for high filter.
I don't have those. Those are the ones you're talking about are either older or more vintage or do they have the white buttons?
Dude, everything with me is more vintage.
No, you're digging. I'm digging that. The ones you're looking at have the white buttons. Yeah, those are older. Those are the real nice ones. Yeah, I don't have those because the ones that come on the box are literally like fused into the plate. It's just like
an extra vertebrae.
Totally. It's built into the structure.
All right, so then you also have the 2500 compressor?
Yeah, I use that a lot on drums in tracking, and then I use it a lot on drums in mixing.
Nice. What are some settings that you enjoy? And like how should we think about a stereo compressor if we're using it on drums?
You know, what I think about when I think about compression in general, I think about just an evening, you know, and when you've got...
It's just an evening? It's just a lovely evening on the piano.
An evening and of the sound, you know, and when I think about like stereo compressing drums, what I usually use that 2500 on is like a bus of the room and the overheads. So, you know, I like picking up the noise floor with a stereo compressor so that I can hear the room, but then trying to like limit its expansiveness in a way that the cymbals don't become what the drum sound is. You know, I mean, Anybody like you who's recorded drums, it's like sometimes I just want to fly to Turkey and figure out who invented the fucking cymbal, dude. like anything.
A turkey indeed.
Totally, dude.
Yeah, man, I'm with you on that. Cymbals. I love hearing stories about producers who they just walked in the room and they just removed all the cymbals.
Totally, dude. Totally.
And then you hear a record where the cymbals are just great. And it's like, and they're like, I was listening to Rage Against the Machine on my drive yesterday. All of them.
Dude, the first album is one of my favorite albums of all time.
And I'm listening to that and I'm thinking like he's riding the hi-hat, but there is nothing too loud about that hi-hat.
Totally. I think the hi-hat, man, a good hi-hat is so good. And a bad just is the worst. What's the middle ground? What are we going to do in 2020 with the hi-hat?
Samples.
Yeah, dude. I've got this killer Steve Jordan hi-hat sample.
What are some tricks you've learned to sort of just dial down the cymbal? Is it just like get the right drummer?
Yeah, I mean, that helps a lot. I mean, just like so many of these things, it's like if I put a U47 on me singing, it would sound really good and the singing would be average, you know? And if I put an SM57 on Adele, you'd be like, damn, that 57 sounds good.
I put an SM7B on Adele.
Did you?
Yeah.
There you go. And I bet you were
great.
like, holy shit, this sounds good,
and she
man.
had a cold. She said like, I have a cold, sorry, but let's do this.
Yeah. And you probably weren't like, man, I wish we brought the 47. You were like, man, she just sounds good. And it's the same with drummers. You know, like if you walk out into a room while they're warming up and the only thing you hear the drummer doing is going shh,
yeah,
you're in trouble,
that's
man.
You're in trouble.
Yeah. But I mean, some things that I do, like, you know, I see guys really close mic cymbals. I don't. I also use a lot of mono ribbon mics as my overhead, you know. One thing that helps is that it's usually in the middle over the kick. So it kind of is like just getting side address cymbals, but then you kind of also just get the ceiling and the air above it. So it almost kind of releases that sound.
Damn, you just reminded me of something that I never think about. How is it that it took me this long to think about it? A ribbon as an overhead, part of the reason it's not getting a lot of cymbals is because it's a figure eight and it's projecting the sides where the damn cymbals are.
Totally. What it actually gets is almost cymbal bounce back. So it almost like lengthens the cymbals while softening them. I like it, but I also use R92 ribbons, AEA R92 ribbons on the kick, rack, and floor too, those, which...
Nice.
If you've ever... This is real talk. I mean...
This is real talk, rock stars.
Rock stars, I'm telling you this right now. If you've ever got
the jam session.
$1,800 burning a hole in your pocket, go buy 3 AEA R92s. Not being paid to say this. In fact, they're probably going to send me a don't ever talk about us again. But they are the best tom and kick mics I've ever used. And you're thinking, man, it's so weird that bidirectional mic. There's no way that's going to sound good on toms. It sounds like you've already noise canceled them. It's insane. It's like silence, 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 boom, silence, 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 boom. Try it. I mean, because you can rent a pair of them for $40 for the day.
Yeah, it's a good point. And actually, even if you're not here, you can.
Totally.
Blackbird.
Is that real?
Well, I mean, they used to ship rentals. So
wow.
I think you could do it. I mean, it'll cost you more than $40.
Totally. Yeah. Because I mean, like if you just go and talk to Rolf, he's like, I don't know, $20 a mic. And it's like, that works.
Sorry, Rolf, if we're talking out of school there.
No, it's not. I mean, I adore that guy. Because, you know, I met him in 2006 when I moved to Nashville and Massenberg got me an internship at Blackbird, you know. And I mean, Rolf was still there and you know, Scott was there and all those, I mean, Mike Simmons, those guys are all just staples of Nashville upstanding, you know, engineer and music guys. They're just good guys.
What were some of the first learning lessons you remember getting when you started at Blackbird?
Get out of here.
Get out of here. Leave the room.
Yeah. That trash needs taking out.
Were you were interning, right, at Blackbird?
Literally. I mean, sweeping floors, going and getting lunches, you know, looking in the windows for every chance I could get. Like, maybe this is the day where I look in and they say, come on in here, man, engineer this record for us.
You know, my finger hurts.
Yeah, come on in here, make all the decisions. And at that point in my career, I probably thought that I could have. You know what I mean? Like,
I thought I was all full of great stuff when I showed up, you know, at the first studio I was at. I was like, I got the ears, man.
I got the ears.
I really know what good sounds like. And then they'd show me something like, oh my God, how the hell did you do that?
How'd you do that?
That sounds amazing.
Totally. That was my initial deal. But all that to say, those R92s on floor toms and rack toms, they will change your life.
All right, so you got an R92 out in front of the kick.
With like some sort of dynamic, you know,
got
D112 or something.
You've got it on the floor tom and the rack tom. Oh, and also a D12, some dynamic. Where do you position them?
I'll D12 kind of in the hole if they've got one. Typically they will. And then sort of the R92 back a little bit. You know, I kind of got to play with it so that I'm not like going up while the other one's going down and not having to flip phase and have it go weird. So yeah, just kind of want the 92 is kind of center mic'd on the drum. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then
how far from the front head of the drum?
3 inches.
Okay, good. And then the other one, the D12,
is in the hole. I mean, it's not in it, but it's
only like 5 inches closer to the.
Yeah, exactly. Like I would say the middle of the D12 is at the head, and then there's like whatever part of it that's going into the hole.
Right. So it's like half and half, splitting the difference.
I never use a bottom mic on snares. 57 on top. Don't overthink the hi-hat mic.
Oh, do you use a hi-hat mic?
I mean, if I do, I delete it and mix. But yeah, right. I mean, sometimes it's nice to have.
It's like a safety just in case.
Totally, right? Totally. And then, you know, R92s, you know, I kind of angle them at the drum the way that you would angle a 421 or something.
I think if you use a hi-hat mic, you get to charge an extra $50.
Well, that's the thing, because it's like,
people,
like it's like the union, for every mic, it's like a side. So this is like a 9-side mic setup.
The drummer reaches up to move the hi-hat mic. Don't touch that. I have to move it.
Whoa, you're taking food out of my kid's mouth.
If you want to capture every nuance of a great performance in your studio, then you're going to need to start with a microphone that is crafted with great care and attention to detail. JZ Mics in Riga, Latvia designs amazing sounding microphones that are handcrafted with jeweler's precision to bring you incredible detail in your recordings. At the heart of JZ microphones is the unique golden drop capsule design, which uses a lighter, faster diaphragm that delivers great clarity and fidelity while avoiding distracting colorations and distortions. This is my voice right now on the new Amethyst microphone with Class A discrete amplifier circuitry, extremely low self-noise, and advanced built-in shock mount technology to bring an expensive sound to your studio for an affordable price. JZ offers a 5-year warranty, free shipping to the US, and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Plus, for a limited time, you can use the coupon code ROCKSTARS to get 50% off the Amethyst microphone at jzmic.com. During the height of record making, Tom Dowd, Muscle Shoals, Stax Studios, Ardent Studios, and the New York City record plant all turned to one company to build their consoles. That company is now Spectra 1964, carried on today through Bill Cheney and Jim Romney. The extremely stable, high-speed circuit design of the 101 amplifier provides unequaled headroom, low noise, and linear output irrespective of transient audio peaks, giving you cleaner, punchier, dynamic recordings. Spectra 1964 brings you the sound of ZZ Top, Aerosmith, Bruce Springsteen, King Crimson, John Lennon, and so many more. Created by the missile engineers who were central in rolling out the systems that protected the free world for over half a century, Spectra 1964 literally brings rocket science to your studio. With the STX 600 mic pre with built-in comp limiter, full-frequency passive BBDI, and C610 dedicated comp limiter, start making records that last a lifetime at Spectra1964.com. All right, so what other cool things do you like to do with the drums? You're talking about crazy crunchy mics, and you said there's stuff that you do in the mix.
Totally. So then typically beyond those mics, I'll put either a Coles or like a AEA R84 is some kind of mono overhead or something like that. Occasionally,
you already got a mono overhead, and then there's another mono overhead.
No. Sorry. When we started talking about those R92s, I like started at kick and started like walking down the console with you. So I started from the beginning.
Okay, dig it. No worries.
Yeah. And the only other thing I'll ever really do with overheads is that Glenn Johns topside thing with a pair of U87s, but I do it so rare because it really works when the drummer's kind of playing quiet and it's got some weird shit.
You're talking about that kind of Glenn Johns miking where it's one mono overhead and the other one's coming
off the tom, pointing at the snare drum, kind of hi-hat vibe. Yeah. It's a really cool miking technique. You know, it takes a second to kind of figure out the left and right panning of the two to kind of pull that snare to the middle. But once you get it, it's a really full sound. It works less if you like are getting after it. You know what I mean? It's like if the drummer's like
beating the drums hard.
I don't know how well that would work on John Bonham. I mean, I'm sure it probably was what he used on, but I mean, like, it seems a little bit not the right vibe.
Yeah.
All that to say. And then I usually use, as like a room mic, I use a stereo AEA R88, which is just a stereo, you know, like offset bidirectional ribbon mic. And that's about it. I don't really use a lot of mics on, or is that a lot of mics? It's like 7.
No, that's plenty. I mean, I might do 11 sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
And usually I don't like what I get after that.
That's right. I think 11 is my max too, dude. If I look down and I've got 15 drum mics, I'm like, I quit.
I think some of my favorite drum micings are the ones where I'm getting away with the Glenn Johns kind of thing.
Totally. 3, 4, 5 mics and just committing, you know.
But it's usually a drummer that is not like boom, bah, boom, boom, bah.
100%. You know? Sometimes you feel like you need to get in there with all that close stuff so you're not missing any of those decisions he makes. Sometimes when you do the Glenn Johns thing, you can just make the fucking drums sound good. You know what I mean? Like whatever's happening, you know. But in terms of outboard and stuff like that with drums, I We'll EQ the kick a little bit. Nothing to the snare, really. I mean, occasionally I'll put a distressor, Empirical Labs distressor on it or something, but usually not.
And that was on which? On the kick or
on the snare? Just on the snare.
Right,
I'll just kind of limit it, or I mean, just kind of get overages and stuff like that. Nothing crazy. 3, 4, 5 dB compression, and nothing on the hi-hat, rack, and floor. And then that's where the 2500 will come in on that overhead, just kind of being aggressive, really trying.
We got a stereo compressor, but it's a mono overhead.
Yeah, I mean, literally sometimes it'll be both. Sometimes it'll be my room mic compressor, but that's actually true. I could have said that, but lately, like this is like sort of real-time stuff. Lately, I've been using the 2500 as my overhead, and then I have an Allen Smart C2 that I use for my room mics, and I just pound the living shit out of those.
Nice.
Like, if it's bouncing at 20 dB of compression, I'm usually like, can we turn it up a little more?
Can we crank it some more?
Because I mean, for me, you can put up a great room mic and it can sound, wow, like holy cow, all we need is a kick mic. And you're kind of right, but you're kind of not right. And and what I want from a room mic is not like this, like sort of like sounding like it's in a church far away sound. I kind of want it to just have like a 1-inch wide dynamic range and just be the sound of everything that's happening.
No matter what happens on the drum set, you just hear it like right front.
Totally. Like when the levee breaks, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like just pounding it,
Yeah, that's one of the things I enjoy about a well-mic'd and mixed drum kit is you just like, there's no detail that goes unnoticed.
Totally. Totally. And I think there's a way to do that. And granted, if you figure it out, tell me, but there's a way to do it where like it's boombastic and it's full, but it's not like, this overbearing, loud, psycho drum sound. Like it can be very clear, very big and full, but wherever you need it to be dynamically, and
right.
There's a lot of fun stuff that in tracking you can do with drums, and I've tried a lot of them. I also like using a big kick as a resonator on a small kick. You've probably done that a bunch. Like,
not a bunch, but I've tried it. Yeah.
Putting like a big 28-inch marching kick in front of like a ported 20-inch Rogers kick and the air coming out of that. I know that you know this.
So tell us, how do you do it? I mean, what is that you're talking about?
Check this out. So what would be a perfect mic if you had air coming out of one sound source and reverberating another sound source behind the first sound source? Bidirectional R92 ribbon mic, So like you've got this R92 that's getting the front
in
head
between the two kicks.
Between the two kicks.
Oh, what a trip, man.
So literally there's not even any phase stuff because it's the same mic. It's just, so it's like, it's the sound that it's happening. So all it is it's essentially like, I mean, the whatever science of it is that the wind that's being forced out of the porthole on the other kick resonates that big kick in a way that adds this like low, subby length to the sound of your kick without you doing anything, just setting a big kick in front of it,
Oh, that's cool, man. I can't wait to try that. And then the first thing I'll do is I'll be like, man, I got to figure out how to gate this thing.
Totally, dude. Totally.
Awesome, dude. Well, so let's talk about guitars too, because I know you do a lot of guitar work, and I think you maybe play a solo or two yourself.
Sure, I can play guitar a little bit, but I don't, if anybody asks me, I don't play any guitar. I don't know how to play.
What are some fun ways to record acoustic for you? I mean, you're working with like Miranda Lambert.
Mono,
right.
That's the biggest mistake I see people make with acoustic guitars is they think more mics, more sound makes it better because when you're recording it, it's like, and it sounds so huge. But, a single mic on an acoustic guitar doesn't have any phase issues. You can control all aspects of the sound. I mean, a mono miking on an acoustic guitar. When I first got to making records, I bought a pair of like Rode matchstick condensers and like NT5s or something like that. And I would like put one by like the bridge and like one up by their fingers. And it was like, oh, fuck, I'm so glad I bought these mics. And then it would be like, 3D. I'd get into mix and it'd be like, I'd mute one and it'd be like, they'd both be on and it'd be like, nah, 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 nah. And I'd mute one and it'd be like, dun, 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 dun. And it's like, oh, okay.
Awesome, man.
Lessons in phase.
But it's fun to explore all those cool miking techniques and the stereo stuff. And
totally. I've explored with under miking toms.
I've done that too.
Yeah, totally.
Or if you have like toms that have no bottom head and you
Totally.
mic 'em from
Jam a mic
inside,
up in there. Totally.
And then put like X's of duct tape on the head of each tom.
And I'm a big proponent. There is, this is topical. We're not curing the coronavirus here. We are literally all sitting around and postulating about sine waves. So like at the end of the day, it all kind of is like gravy. It all just kind of works out,
Well, we'll see how that line resonates when this comes out later. Hopefully,
I was saying we're not.
Nothing. Yeah,
we're not curing. Yeah.
Yeah.
The things that we're trying to solve in here are, it's like, there isn't a correct. If a guy under mics a tom, or if a guy wants to like do any sort of weird thing that we've already tried and failed, I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't think there are bad ideas. I think that we create illusions that there are correct ways to record and incorrect ways to record. Some of the worst sounds I've ever recorded on something would have been perfect for this other thing.
Yeah.
It's not like we're all trying to find the one correct way to record an acoustic, the one correct way to mic a kick drum. Like, those are the mics I'm using right now. I mean, I've used a 67 on a kick drum before. I mean, I regretted it pretty immediately.
Which of your mics have you enjoyed using on acoustic recently?
I have a really old 414 BULS. I will use that 47. Sounds really good on acoustic.
Would you describe the 414 as being, and the BULS as being like a little bit darker and forgiving of the top end?
Than other 414s?
Yeah, just another sort of like bright
most like a lot of the
stuff.
BLXs and all those, they're just really bright mics, and the BULS I have, I think I one time serialed it out and it was like, I think from 82 or something like that. I don't know if it was brighter in 82 than it is now. I don't know how things degrade, but it's got a lot of brilliance.
It had more gated reverb on it in 82. No, actually, that was 82 was a little too soon for that.
Totally.
Mid-80s, maybe, right?
Totally, dude. The mic just comes with reverb.
It still wanted to be a 1970s prog rock album in 82.
And then I have a Neumann KM56 I use on acoustic a lot. And I use a RCA KU3A. Those are kind of the four things I choose from.
And what's the KU3A?
It's a big old 50s RCA ribbon mic. It was, a lot of people use it. I use it for vocals. It's kind of like, in a lot of ways, the rarer big brother of the 44.
Okay, and it's not the one that has the funny angled front.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. It's the one that's got like, it's like circular on the bottom and then it comes up and it's got the weird slant.
Yeah, weird slant on it. What's the slant for? Are you supposed to like talk down into it or something?
Yeah, I asked the guy, that guy in New Jersey who, there's that guy, this is real talk too. If you own an RCA microphone and you have found one that's for sale, that's broken, blah, 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 and you really want it or whatever, there's a guy in New Jersey who is like 80 years old and works every day on RCA mics. And he was he worked as an RCA tech for RCA from like 1950 to like 1980 or some shit, And when RCA stopped making mics, he went and bought literally all of their stock. So
we're not talking about Wes Dooley himself, are we?
Is that his name?
Of AEA?
Oh, no. This guy is strictly just fixes RCA mics from his entire garage full of legit RCA NOS stuff.
Right on.
And so like if you like had a BK5 that literally just had the thing that screws onto the mic stand, the whole mic was missing, the cable, the ribbon, everything, he could build it from you from new old stock, brand new BK5.
Well, I got a BK5, but it needs, I think it's missing one of the screws on the side.
Literally, just send it to him. And I thought he was going to he re-ribboned the KU3A, the paintbrush, and the BK for me. And I thought he was going to send me a bill for like $2,000. It was like $400.
Awesome. Well, we'll see if we can find that info for you, Rockstars, and put that in the show notes too. Because that would be a cool contact for people.
Yeah, I mean, if he is the RCA literal guru, and he may be the last one.
Very cool, man. All right, so let's talk about.
Oh yeah, guitars.
Yeah, guitars.
Oh, you said acoustic.
Let's talk about electric guitars now too.
Sure. What do you want to?
Well, I mean, like, would we stick a 57 on the amp?
Always.
And how do you know where to stick this 57?
I like to shine a light in there literally and just kind of put it, I think about speaker in terms of like quadrants, like a slice of pizza, and I like to put it in the middle of one of the slices of pizza, literally. Like I don't like it right on the rim of the thing, and I do not want it pointing at the cone. You know what I mean? Somewhere like the 1.5 inches from the, the 3 inches or 4 inches from the cone to the edge, somewhere in one of those corner quadrants, is where I like to do it.
When you
Shakir showed me that, and
accidentally-
I've just never really
All right, well,
been
maybe,
able to beat it.
and this might not be a fair question, but the times where you've heard it and it was around the middle or it was on the edge of the cone, do you remember what you heard and why you were like, oh, that's wrong?
Big time. So like on the cone, it just sounds enveloped. You kind of lose anything but the sound. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, and it's like instead of da-na-na-na, like, and then, getting out on the edge, it just kind of starts to sound kind of thin and
Like a
unrealized.
blanket or
Yeah,
something,
yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Love
a
the worst is
BK5.
where you like do a session, you go out there and you're like, shit, it was like the speaker's over to the left and somebody put this on the right.
Dude, here's an even better one for you. Day 2 of tracking Miranda's record, the first one we did, I got all the drums feeling really fucking good. And then one day I was sort of like, or it's on the day 2, I was sort of like, I don't know, man. I wonder about that snare. And Matt goes, well, I don't know. It's kind of pointing at the floor time. He goes, it's kind of pointing at the rack time. Do you want it to aim at the snare? And I'm just like, Matt, how long has it been like that? Oh, I don't know. It was like that when I got here today.
Last 2 all week.
Always recheck your mic placements the next day, dude.
But speaking of guitar stuff, I remember hearing stories about Eric Valentine doing Queens of the Stone Age. And apparently like they were using like a biodynamic M160 ribbon or something. And the perfect sound was miking between all 4 speakers on a 4-way 412 cabinet. It was like it was pointed towards the wood, and that was like the secret spot.
And I don't know enough about those 160s. I've heard of them. Do you know if they're bidirectional or if they're like weird hypercardioid ribbons or what they are?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
That's a cool thing. And granted, these are the things I typically do. Most of the things I typically do, I get back into the control room and then make a little micro adjustment,
Right.
or whatever. I mean, Valentine literally has motorized mic stands, doesn't he? He literally has a stand that
I think he
goes
has robots that walk around the studio.
totally,
and
he's like
say,
Aphex Twin,
can I get
dude.
you a tea? So,
He's like, I literally think he's got stands that like move the 57 back and left and right and stuff, so he can just sit in the control room and like listen to how it's all.
probably.
That's
And
bougie, man. That is
wouldn't we all if
bougie.
we could?
Yeah, totally. I'm not hating on it. I'm asking him who made them for him.
Well, now there's companies that make them. I don't know them. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but you can just Google it. And
I don't have a
and they're out
6-pack
there
yet,
too.
so I don't mind a little bit of a 12-step walk,
Right on, dude. So actually answering your question, I would guess that those mics, the M160 is probably like that hypercardioid.
Yeah, because it's got
Because
that, like,
I know they
nose,
also
right?
make a figure 8 ribbon, which
Yeah.
is like front address, back address kind of thing.
I'd love to know more about that. But totally, yeah, like, and I've also had really good luck, rare because I don't try it all the time, but like with putting a mic in the back. You know what I mean? Like, and getting, like, if you've got a really bright guitar, the guitar player just doesn't understand that his guitar is too bright, stick a mic in the back.
Yeah.
And it'll just be like, he ain't bright anymore.
And another really fun way to mic up a guitar, if you can get to the front and back of the amp, if it's an open back cabinet.
Exactly,
put
yeah.
a 57 on the front and then put one matching on the back pointed the other direction.
The other direction.
Yeah,
Oh, you
like
mean pointing
towards
toward- yeah,
it.
exactly. That's
And
what
then
I'm
you
saying,
flip
yeah.
phase and you get this weird thing. You can pan them out and get like a kind of a little bit of a freaky head around, wrap your head around stereo, which of course later you'll mute one of them. You go like, now it's so much louder. What?
Totally.
Never
Well,
again.
that's a whole other conversation. That goes into doubling guitars, man. Like, a lot of people, you'll be working with guitar players and they'll, hey, I've got this part for the chorus. And then before you even do anything, they say, all right, give me 3 more tracks. And it's like the illusion that more is louder or better or bigger is so confusing to me. Like I mean, whose guitar sounds bigger? Like, the 8 chorus guitars on Imagine Dragons or Jimmy Page's guitar. like he's not tripling his guitar and adding a diamond track and a volume swell track. He's just playing fucking guitar, dude.
Dude, you know, they say, man, it's not the size of your pencil. It's how you write your name.
Totally. And I mean, you know, like that's sort of that thing too. You know, I mean, I love loud, badass, full guitars. But the idea of a doubled version of it and then a tripled and a quadrupled version of it, basically by design is saying your guitar part is so whatever that I can copy it 3 times in a row after. You know what I mean? Like I think a lot of that stuff takes humanity and the musicianship out of it, and you're just sort of at that point executing parts and you're not playing music, you know?
Right. Yeah. Good point. Executing parts instead of playing music.
Yeah. I mean, if your goal is to like knock out a checklist of ideas, man, I can cut a record for you in a day and a half.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
I'm not saying what I would be doing would be worth anything. I'm just saying, like, you know, if you already know what it is, man, they probably make an app for it. Like, just go use the app.
So tell us about working with Miranda Lambert. So, you know, when I listen to those records, I think that I can't tell whether you're trying to capture everything in the moment in a live performance or whether this is more of a hybrid of like some of this needs to be live, some of this needs to be like let's carefully put, you know, get our best vocal takes or whatever. Sure. I don't know what. Tell us about the process that works for that sort of production, you know?
That record is very unique for her, though, in the sense that she'd made a lot of other records before, five, I think, you know, and they were not like the record I made on her. And I think from the jump when she approached me about doing it, you know, I think she had something to say. I think she was going through some stuff. And I think after having conversations with Frank and her about what we were doing, it just slowly started to feel, or maybe even quickly started to feel like we needed to hole up somewhere and get some people we trusted and, like we've been talking about, play music together. I think that she has had some expertly executed and produced and successful records, but this record was about her.
Right.
And what she was going through as a person at that time. So we had 7 people. We had Matt Chamberlain on drums, Glenn Worf on bass, Luke Reynolds on guitar, Frank Rishi on guitar, and then Spencer Cullum on steel, and Miranda at times playing and singing all the time.
Is that on Rebel Warrior? Or is that on the other one? Was it Tin Man was one of the tracks? That
Tin Man's on Way to These Wings, yeah.
Yeah, okay, right, sorry. Yeah.
Yep.
Why does it say Rebel Warrior? Oh, maybe that was the person who posted the YouTube video.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Shout out to Rebel Warrior.
And then Vice was another track that we included too.
So Vice was the first song released off that record. When that song came out, it was the only one I'd mixed. And at that point, Vice was the 36. It wasn't, not in terms of timing or tracking or value. It was just song 36. We had tracked 36 songs, and then I mixed 32 of them, and then we released 24 of them. And
wow, that was the double album.
Mm-hmm. And you know, we got done tracking it, and I remember her saying, I don't know how the fuck we're going to shave 20 songs off this. So we didn't. But that record, in terms of what it was like, it was a lot of the things, that most records that I work on aren't. And none of the things that some records I work on. It was not, when we were making that record, it was not about, hey man, I've got this lick, or hey man, check this out. It was basically despair and misery because we were all so focused on what we were bringing to the table for these moments, like just playing music together. It takes a while to get players out of, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I do every day. I think this is what will get the producer happy, and just play.
Right.
And
get into discovery mode.
Totally. And unknown mode, and that's basically where we lived for 9 months making that record. We didn't know. There'd be days where we'd go in and cut a song 20 different ways for 12 hours, all leave pissed off, not at each other, at ourselves, upset, sad, come back in the next day and nail it. It was just like that for 9 months. Just, let's take a break, guys. Everyone kind of wanders around and just kind of like, what am I going to bring to the table here? Because there was some really great songs on there from a girl that's already pretty well known that was putting her, heart on her sleeve out there.
So let me spin that to a question about allowing that intensity to happen on a session and allowing everybody to feel like lost at the same time. How do you hold all that together? And, what have you learned about that? Maybe Frank's got good thoughts about that too. But are we at risk of losing? Like, is there a risk of a session becoming unraveled when 100%. People explore?
I've had entire records come unraveled that way. Absolutely. I've had records that I thought were going to change some stuff that, halfway into it, the artist got freaked out and went and cut a record they knew that would have a hit on it, or
three something. Of every guitar.
Total, exactly. But a lot of times what that really means is I want someone else to do it for me. And to Miranda's credit, there was no fucking way that was going to happen. She was in it, and so smart. Frank and I would be sitting in the control room, and I'd be like, man, this just feels fast to me. And the take would end, and she'd stick her head up. Does it feel fast to y'all? I mean, she was in it. And there aren't too many decisions on that record that she wasn't at least included and most likely involved in.
Right.
And that's, I'm sure this, for big artists, sometimes that's a rarity, man. Sometimes they just come in and sing, and
particularly maybe in the country production.
Maybe that's what I mean. Maybe that's exactly
Nashville
right.
Style.
Yeah. It's a little bit like, a record is made for you to sing, and man, Weight of These Wings was made by her, from her, you know what I mean? And that was the thing that I took away from that record more than anything, was that she was the real deal.
Some great lines in there. I mean, Weight of These Wings, that's just a great
That's actually
image,
a line that her dad wrote in a song. It's actually, I can't remember the story right. I think it's the title of a song, or a lyric in the first song her and her dad ever wrote together, or something like that. It has some deeper meaning even than the name, but I love Weight of These Wings.
Yeah, I mean, I just imagine it in this context too. It's like the wings is the trying to take off with your creative work and just own it and just let this be me, it's 100% totally me. And the weight of that is what you described.
We need hits, man. We ain't hear any hits on here. We need hits, man. Yeah, literally.
That's tough.
But it was, in a lot of ways, one of the most enjoyable and challenging processes of my life.
It would be hard to describe in one sentence what gives records a legendary sound, but it would be easy to describe in 3 letters: API. For more than 50 years, API Audio has created large format consoles for world-class studios. Famous for co-founder Saul Walker's circuit designs and the original 2520 op-amp, the sound of API consoles is the sound of great music. API now brings that legendary sound to your home studio with the Box, a small format console featuring the famous API circuitry that is the perfect analog addition for your digital studio. The Box gives you 8 recording channels on the left with built-in mic pre's, high-pass filters, direct inputs, and custom loadable 500 module slots, and 16 summing channels on the right, or mix using all 24 channels, including aux sends, inserts, and silky smooth faders, feeding a master section with classic API compression, switchable monitor sends, and a Pro TalkBack switch, and you've just upgraded your studio to legend status with the Box from APIaudio.com. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Rockstars of Drums will show you how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Want to start mastering your own records? Rockstars of Mastering walks you through exactly how I mastered my own record using nothing but plugins in PreSonus Studio One. Want to learn how to create a mix that doesn't suck but rocks instead? At Mixmaster Bundle, I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins so that you can have punchy, powerful drums, guitars that rock, bass you can feel, and a mix that is in your face. Plus, it's totally free as my way of saying thanks for listening. Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now and look for the clickable link in the show notes below. So what about songwriting? Are you a songwriter yourself? You talk about an appreciation for song. How do you like to get involved as a producer in the record? Do you try and arrive at the songwriting? Are the songs written and you arrive and then there's a pre-production process? Talk a little bit about the smart way to go from beginning and into the studio and who knows where the end is, but you know.
I think a lot of that is dependent on what you think a good song is. And for me, you know, I always say that I like songs from people, not for people. And I like being involved as the songs are being written while they're being written. I don't like to sit in there and write songs with them because most of the artists that I gravitate towards and just have this desire to work with are artists that have their own story and their own sound and their own point of view. And I feel like in a lot of creative situations, by committee is rarely a good thing. And I'm not taking anything away from four people sitting in a room and writing the next like catchy tune, you know, but you ain't writing Yesterday with four people. Right. You just aren't.
Yeah. Good point. So, the first track in the playlist, Tin Man, I just love the metaphor there. Between the Tin Man's basically,
time.
The concept like Tin Man searching for a heart. Guess what? You might not want one because it freaking hurts or whatever.
Literally. And as poignant as that is in her life at that moment, dealing with, marriage stuff and tabloid stuff and, the weight of these wings.
So when you're helping an artist with their songs, or you're just trying to pay attention or just trying to, be a good shepherd or whatever into the studio, what are some things that you might pick up on with different artists where you're like, oh, I feel like, do you ever make suggestions lyrically? Do you have ways to watch out for lyrical challenges? Are there other elements that sort of tend to sort of creep up? Like what are the 10 most common mistakes in songwriting?
No, sure. I mean, I think that, for me, one of the most important things is you. Like if it sounds like you're right, that's why I say I like songs from people, not for people. Like if it sounds like you're writing this song for your album / hopefully Keith Urban hears it and puts it on his record, that's a song for people. When you write, Traveling Soldier, that's a song from people. And like I don't know how to say it. It's not like it's like a bullshit meter. I just, I've heard a lot of songs like you have, Lidge. I've heard a lot of songs that sound like other songs. I've heard a lot of songs that sound like they're trying to be popular. I've heard a lot of songs that if I made the bass drop here, everyone would think it was great. But it just doesn't amount to shit. And so I just challenge. I'm never going to be like, hey, that chorus lyric is that? What if it was? I'm less that. And I just say like, man, I don't really hear you in this song. Or I don't know what this is, what this is telling me about you or your life or what you feel, I kind of approach it that way more. I have such a respect for the songwriter and what they have to say that if I'm committed to making this album with them, I've already committed to what they have to say.
Are there any telltales as far as when somebody is writing a song that's from them? For example, Are you more likely to see an artist feeling uncertain and shaky about delivering that lyric?
Yeah, that
and
vulnerability.
Like, scared.
Unsure, nervous. Do you think people are going to hate that I say
or
that?
Embarrassed?
Totally. Does it sound stupid? Like, and it's like, nope. What sounds stupid is you trying to sound other than yourself. That sounds stupid.
Right. Which is funny because I feel like there's also opportunities to do something that might sound borrowed, but kind of own it. And then it does become from you.
Totally. I mean, because like it's really subtle what we're talking about because like I'm not like, if you're an electric guitar player and I'm saying just be yourself, I'm not saying start playing a J minor chord. Like it's like
J minor.
It's like you're probably playing a G, like it's like I get it. It's like we got a couple of notes to choose from, but intention and like where it's coming from, like one of the biggest pitfalls in the studio is the phrase, how I hear it in my head.
Right.
There's a good chance that the reason you hear it in your head is because it already exists in another song. It's not this original concerto that you hear in your mind that nobody else hears. You hear, I kind of hear a dan-dan-dan-bam, and it's like, well, what's the song reference? Like,
right.
Just get out there and play, We can talk about and we can think about what it's supposed to be or what it should be or who my fans think it needs to be. But if it's not you, we lose.
What about the suggestions, the crossover from one musician to another, as far as like, I'm really feeling the beat like, like that kind of stuff. How often is that a positive versus another like red flag?
Yeah. I mean, it's an extreme red flag if one player is telling another player how he hears it. I mean, I'll just nip that shit in the bud immediately. Yeah, that is just like, that is, but like even in my role, right? Like how many times have you been sitting on a back couch watching a producer be like, man, and then when you go to the chorus, go like, and when you go, and then go to hat, and then you're back on the ride. Dude, what are you doing? Could you imagine saying that to Matt Chamberlain? Go to the ride. And he's like, dude, I was thinking about setting up tablas in my Electron MPC, dude. Just let me be myself.
But it's that good reminder, you're talking about Matt Chamberlain coming in on the session.
He's I say that not to name drop. It's because I've become like sort of lost at sea without Max Zemenovic and Matt Chamberlain. If I don't use one of those two drummers, I got to pass on your record. I'm kidding. So
how important is it to...
And Fred Eltring. Fred's great too. Sorry.
Yeah, Fred's awesome. Man.
Yeah.
But talk about that, like choosing the drummer. How often have you been faced with an artist or somebody comes along and they've already got a band or something, and maybe it's a drummer, maybe it's another musician, and you find yourself compelled to suggest that we should work with somebody that can deliver?
That's right. Are you saying adding pieces to an already sort of piece, or replacing pieces?
Yeah, replacing pieces.
Yeah,
talk about some of the challenges.
It's weird,
that.
Like that that conversation on the surface seems like it would be more of a pitfall than it is. But I've found that it's, for me, I can't really think of a bunch of times where I've been like, hey man, is it cool if we use Matt Chamberlain? And they're like, no, I want to use my buddy Shaky. And it's like,
Shaky.
Rarely does that actually happen, But what is really fun is when it's like, I'm cutting this record with these young kids out of Knoxville, Connor Kelly, and they're just so good, man. And they're so young and they don't know why they're good yet. They don't even know what's great about them yet, but like they just are really good. But they have like a drummer that's like just a hired gun. So I hired Max, and like getting to work with Max and like a couple of other players is a lot of fun. Like, you have an artist come in and he's got this just really great guitar player and it's just him. So you got to call a drummer and a bass player, and then like having the fun of like figuring out who would mesh well or like what kind of playing styles are really good, because, at the level of musicians that, typically you and I are fortunate enough to work with, it's not like I'm hoping this guy can play a halftime groove. It's like he can do everything. So now it's less like I'm thinking about how good he plays drums or guitar, and I'm thinking, is this person going to get pissed off at me when I say, I don't know, man, let's just find it? As opposed to saying like, some people you work with, well, my track's in there. I don't know what I'm going to do differently. Great.
Do you feel like this is part of the process of awareness too, where I feel like it's easier for me if I'm playing the instrument, but it's sometimes harder if I'm engineering or producing. But that thing where like the singer or the songwriter can't settle into what they're doing because the musicians aren't getting it or they're stepping on top of it,
Sure,
kind of thing.
Sure. And, I kind of front load that stuff. I just kind of literally say, if you're buying into what we're doing, the first day doesn't exist. Just be prepared for that. It's just going to be failure after failure after, I'm not sure why we're doing this. Is this guy the right producer, engineer? Should I fire him today? But then after this first couple days of the butt sniffing and the vulnerability and the fear and the unsuredness starts to go away, and all you're left with is your guitar and your pedals and your headphones that are playing music that you've never heard before, and all you get to do is react. If you can get there, you can get to the end.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't get there.
Yeah. Rayland Baxter.
Love him.
Great
He was
musician,
in my wedding. He's
great
one of my best
songwriter.
friends on planet Earth.
Tell us about working with him. Share some good stories about.
It's
making records
fucking
with him.
horrible.
So the first one you did was the little M box.
Yeah, literally on that. No, that
Is that
M-box.
the one with Mr. Rodriguez on?
No,
it?
that's
Was it?
Imaginary Man, the second one. I've cut
Right.
4 albums on him. 2 of them are EP, or 5. 3 of them are EPs, and 2 of them are full-length albums. And then he's cut sort of like a album after, an album and an EP after that I couldn't do because I was working on Miranda.
He's great too. I've had the pleasure of having him in my Bonnaroo studio.
Oh, we joked
singer
about
and
this
everything, too.
when he got done with that session. Him and I left, and as Willie would do, went and hung out.
Code for, I don't know what.
Yeah, exactly. Bonnaroo.
Code for Colorado.
Yeah, exactly. With a hint of California. All that to say, Rayland, working with him is one of the worst experiences of my life. It's like working with my brother who I want to punch in the face all the time. And I love him more than anything in the world. I'm joking. It's been the joy of my life to work with him. And it's unlike working on any other project that I work on, because we have knockdown, drag out fights where he leaves the studio because we couldn't decide on where we wanted to eat lunch. And then come back the next day and high five and keep rolling.
It's always the same answer. El Jalisciense.
El
Tacos up the
Jalisciense.
street.
Exactly, man.
We call it the Jolly Gente.
You remember, and you remember when that place was a market and a food place, before it got ripped out and was just all a restaurant now.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's where
and now, you're taking me way back to La Hacienda days when I remember the same thing and over in Woodbine area.
Back when Mas Tacos was driving around.
Yeah. So Rockstars, obviously lunch is important. Food is important in
Big
the
time.
studio.
It is. It really is.
You got to have your favorite place.
And, this is not me being cool or whatever, but, on 4 or 5, sort of higher budget records, we've catered, dude. Ooh la la. Because then you never have to, but for all the rock stars that have done sessions and are listening now, that is one of the biggest decisions of every day in the studio. We stop what we're doing. Where are we going to eat?
Right.
Well, I had burgers yesterday. Okay, cool. I don't really feel like barbecue. I'm kind of got so it's like you look by and it's like an hour's gone by. We're driving to go eat. Should we just is today over?
Yeah. It's somehow it takes into for granted. It takes for granted the idea that we're all going to eat together. It's
Totally.
Whatever happened to everybody, just go get your food and come back.
And Southern Ground includes meals when you work there. Rebecca Wood, who's the studio manager, man,
she's
you
great.
and there's something great about catering or prepared meals that there is no conversation. We work. Food's done, walk downstairs, tell a couple jokes, all eat together, and then just get back to work,
Such a great thing, man.
It is a great thing. And there's a couple of really cool people in Nashville that very affordably cater. Like they'd cater this place for like, $80 a day or something. You get 2 big meals,
So that's great.
It's good.
I might have to look into that.
Yeah, it's good.
Brandon Bell was on the show.
Love
awesome.
Brandon. Brandon's one of the first people I met in Nashville when he was still an assistant for Gary Pachoza. Or, I always say assistant or when I describe that, but I think he was his engineer. You know what I mean? And that was when I met Brandon. It was in 2006, and he was working with Gary pretty much nonstop. I think there's not too many smarter engineers, and there's not too many nicer people in this town. Brandon is somehow still nice when I can tell he's probably slept an hour and a half and has worked 16 hours and been a dad for 3 hours, and he's still cool, dude. And I can tell he's not like hanging out with Brandon having drinks cool, but he's still like, yeah, man, what do you need to do, man? And it's like, you can see behind his eyes, he's like, I'm going to fucking kill somebody, bro. But I couldn't say higher, nicer things about Brandon Bell. I have so much respect for his engineering, his ears, and his kindness.
Awesome, dude. Do you feel like the time you spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Here are just some of the things students are saying about the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass.
Absolutely the most informative and helpful block of information and mentoring on the mix process I have ever been a part of. That was like sitting behind a mix engineer for years, watching and picking up tips along the way, condensed into a 6 to 7 hour lesson.
David P.
Thanks for a great session, dude. Just when I needed the inspiration.
John F.
A true feat of greatness. It was really life-changing and worth way more than I paid.
Mark R.
I've literally watched it 2 times at length, taken a plethora of notes, then combed back over some sections even more. You guys really knocked it out of the park on this one, and it was so incredibly eye-opening and useful immediately. What else can I say?
Shane J.
Amazing masterclass with Craig Alvin. My biggest takeaway was the concept of adding a subtle combination of distortion and compression to achieve a buttery cohesion in the sound. But there is so much more.
Steve K. Listen, I appreciate you listening to this podcast, and I know you're trying to make your best record ever. But when you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then you're ready for UltimateMixingMasterclass.com. Let's jump into some of our closing questions here.
Great.
Our real jam session questions.
Yeah, the jam session.
Yeah. So whatever your kind of quick thoughts are on this stuff, when you started out in recording, what do you feel like was holding you back? Your MBox One?
Yeah, my
Apparently
MBox
not.
One gear. But, people, knowing a great drummer, knowing an artist that doesn't suck, knowing, how many records when you were first starting out did you cut for like $40? And you know what I mean? And you never hear it again. And it's just like, and that person 5 months after you cut the record went and started working at Walmart. It's like whatever.
Yeah,
like,
I would drive from Nashville to St. Louis and like go into a studio on a Friday night, not sleep Friday and Saturday, and then drive home like Sunday night for $50. And the $50 just went towards the gas to get there and back.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. So like what held me back was fortunately, you and I kind of just had little hints of the only way to make records is in that big studio at the end of the street. We had a little hints of that, but we really, our understanding and growth and like development in music really kind of did develop with
the home studio
vibe. And like being
I was so excited about the whole concept of DIY and everything.
Big time, man. And I mean, like this studio is incredible and you could cut anything you wanted. You could cut fucking Led Zeppelin here. And it just really, it's like it moved from felt like I was held back to feeling enabled. And that was one of the coolest things to your question, holding me back. For me, man, it was almost like as soon as I realized the home studio thing was a thing, from that moment, I've almost always felt empowered.
Yeah.
You know, but until then, it was always like, man, I can't wait to record, you know?
You know, one thing I didn't ask about your home studio, what do you enjoy doing for monitors and just like listening and knowing, you know, that's one of the first places that we take a home studio and try and mimic a pro studio or something, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think, do you know Chad Evans?
Yeah, Chad's great.
Yeah, Chad at Westlake Pro, he's just such a smart dude and such a great dude. And, you know, 10 years ago, when he was still at Guitar Center Pro, he said to me, man, you need to invest in good monitors because they inform every single decision you make in the studio. And that's true. So I, for the longest time, had a pair of Dyno Audio BM5s. And they were cool. They were just close near fields. They were just kind of my first 5 years mixing. And then I got, for cutting a record, a guy gave me a pair of Focal Twins as kind of my big sort of loud, I can't mix on them, but they're really loud. You need a really good set of loud speakers in the control room. Yeah. Come on in, man. You guys sound fucking, you know, like, But man, Jordan at PMC a while ago and Chad kind of gave me a deal and hooked me up. So I've got a pair of PMC 226s and then I've got the sub that goes with it.
Right on.
And they're the best speakers I've ever
That's been a
heard.
game changer,
they're the best speakers I've ever owned. They're the best speakers I've ever wanted to own. And granted, they make bigger versions of them that I'd probably want more than those. But if you have got $11,000 burning a hole in your pocket, I would buy a pair of PMC 226s and the sub that goes with it.
Right on, man. Well, I think that's an important thing. And,
By the way, I didn't have $11,000 laying around. I literally had to cut 2 records and be like, all right, here's my PMC money.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I mean, like when I started putting mine together, I still haven't bought like high-end speakers. You know, I did for years and years, just a pair of NS10s and a sub. And I learned to work with them.
You usually have NS10s in here, don't you?
Yeah, I just blew them up.
Yeah, cool.
I blew them up. They're gone now. Yeah,
I have a pair that I'm not even using.
You know what? I actually really like these. I have the KRK Rocket 10s because I had them already. Put them up and I'm like, this is great, man. I'm enjoying the shit out of this.
And not to interrupt you, to take that even a step further, man, great speakers are great. You knowing your speakers is paramount.
Right.
Like you could, you know, obviously like having some NS10s or these KRKs, it gets you a lot closer than a lower grade speaker. But if you had a lower grade speaker and you worked on it for 3 years, that speaker to you is better than any speaker on the market. Because as soon as you go buy your $20,000 barefoot micro mains, good luck. The next year of your life is spending no man's land, trying to guess, going out to your car and being like, holy shit, the low end's fucked. You know, like knowing your speakers is the most important thing to mixing audio.
Yeah.
That's why I find it fascinating and impressed by it when like, you know, like got like big time, you know, 90s and 80s engineers can just mix anywhere. And it just sounds like them, you know, like no matter where they go. And I've always been fascinated by that. My few mistakes at like going to Blackbird, hey, I'm gonna mix it on the Neve, man, or I'm gonna fucking mix it on the API Southern Ground or whatever. It was always like pretty good. And then I brought it home and tried to beat it and always did.
Yeah. Well,
and it wasn't because I had better techniques, you know, it was like probably worse techniques.
I did some mixing at Blackbird, but the reason we screwed it up is because we spent 4 days trying every single piece of gear on every single track. Forgot to actually mix.
But you will never, but that information is now in your brain.
Yeah. Yeah. I won't do that again.
No, but I'm saying like you also know what like a GML sounds like on a B3. Like,
yeah.
You know?
Well, the thing that surprised me was like the V76 was the best sound on the kick drum. We just ran it through that.
Hit me to that mic pre.
This is a tube mic pre.
Yeah, Telefunken V76. I see them. Cool. I never choose them. Are they great? Are they world famous? What are they?
Oh, they're awesome, man.
Where did that mic pre sort of like start?
Well, I don't know the whole history behind it, but I know that the band I was working with got one of those, and then I think we had an LA2A to go with that.
Great.
And that became like the ultimate sound for percussion and also for bass.
Whoa.
Plug into the V76, plug the bass in, go through the LA2A.
And that's a sound.
And cut to tape. We were doing like a 1-inch 8-track tape thing, and
that's
it just
great.
sounded killer.
I'm going to try that next time. V76 bass into 11 LA2A.
Yeah, and if you're doing percussion, Coles, V76, LA2A, or 1176.
I'm going to try both of those things.
Cut into that, and then play the tambourine quietly in front of the Coles.
Do people know how to do that?
I taught myself how to do that.
It's clipping. Try it. It's still clipping.
My favorite with tambourine is when a drummer gets up there and they start like wildly swinging it because they're feeling the dance, you know? And it's like every beat is off.
It's like, that ain't working, man.
It's like, holy crap. Thanks, man.
That is beyond editing.
Then when they go back, when everybody leaves, you just go out there and in 2 seconds, you're like...
Totally. And then maybe like copy it a couple times and you're like, man, you're killing it out there.
You know, that is the funny thing about percussion. Like if the song lives on a grid, no matter how many times, or if it was played to a click, almost no matter how many times I just like think I just nailed that. I go back and I just loop it and it sounds better.
Totally.
On the percussion.
Totally. Because that is one thing, you know, I don't mind to live a little give and pull on some drums or the whole track in general. But if like the tambo is like missing stuff, it's just like put it down, man, or fix it, like you're saying. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that's the one thing you got to scoot it toward the snare.
Totally,
late scoot over there.
Yeah, a little late, man.
All right, so how about some of the best advice you remember receiving in the studio?
Strings don't make your song more important.
Nice. That's great. I haven't heard that yet. Love it.
No, I mean, you know.
But they do make your budget grow.
Woo, 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 woo. And you want to start getting into somebody who arrange those strings, that is your record budget.
In all fairness, that depends on how you're doing them.
No, that's right.
I know very affordable string players.
No, totally.
Things.
Yeah, that's just a funny one, you know, because like sometimes you'll be in sessions and people are like, and then strings, you know, and then strings. Yeah. It's like... Sure, yeah, it's important now.
And then, well, I mean, it's not like strings fill up a lot of space and maybe needed to be thought about as one of the starting sounds.
It's just it's like organ, you know? It's just like some things kind of run the 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz bandwidth and are just like a semi-truck going through your mix, you know? But I mean, you know, for me in terms of advice, man, I've had people tell me and I've told other people that this shit is a grind, man. Yeah. I've mixed probably 250 records, and I feel like I am such a novice still. You know, I expecting to like get to some place from listening to me talk or listening it'll maybe show you a door or two, but eventually you're going to have to walk through it and realize you're in the dark. And I just keep loving sounds, keep loving music and figuring out how to get to the core of the humanity of a person or your artist or the guitar player, you know, because if you aren't prepared for really depressed nights in your life, this isn't for you. But I'm just saying, it's just real talk because like, but you will watch your friends become doctors. You will watch your friends become lawyers. You will watch your friends. But I don't get up at 7 a.m. and drive to an office building. So, you know, there's some give and pull. You know what I mean? But like, just stay at it. Just stay at it. You know, when I think about myself right now, I think I'm the same person I graduated from Berklee 14 years ago, but I'm not. The things... When you probably think about like, man, you know, I mean, I've gotten better, but I mean, have I? But then if you really start taking stock of like bad decisions you made 15 years ago versus now, that's where the growth comes from. And I would just say, stay with it, man. I mean, this is probably a reused thing, but I'm telling you from the bottom of my heart, if I can get to where I've gotten, every single person listening can get past me.
Yeah, nice, man. Well, I mean, it's like all those experiences that you have, you're just increasing the size of your toolbox.
Totally.
You know?
That's exactly right.
You just got a lot more color choices with which to paint this picture today.
That's what I meant when you said you mixed that record at Blackbird and you said you tried all that stuff. That's what I meant. Like you might not ever do that again, but you learned, I bet, tremendous amounts from plugging in that piece of gear, plugging in that piece of gear. That's too much. That's not enough. You know, like that stuff is what we do, you know, and trying to record the perfect this or the perfect that, or this guy didn't do it right and I'm doing it right. That's not what engineering is, man. It's just not what it is. It's like, it's still an expression. It's still like, it's not, it's, you know, when you crack open one of these things, sure, there's some science in there, but how we use it is not science.
Right.
It is expression.
It's just artistic choice.
If you're like thinking something's too crazy or, oh man, nobody would ever play this, instead of dialing it back, try dialing it up a little more.
Yeah, go the other direction.
Go the other direction, because dialing it back and just having it sound cool and good, man, I promise you're not the first guy to that island.
That's awesome, man. All right, well, let's take it to the closing question here. We're going to take the Wayback Studio machine. You're going to go back in time and find young Eric. And you're going to say, listen, dude, I've come back through time to give you this one bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. Would you give yourself the same advice you just gave, or what advice would you give to yourself?
Can I do a serious one and a funny one?
Sure, man. Do them all.
The funny one is go into a different career.
Get a real job.
Get a real job, hippie. No, I mean, yeah, I would tell myself, really good job not coming up with a B plan.
Yeah.
I never had one, and I still don't. If people stop calling me to make records, I'm going to have to figure some shit out, because I don't have another plan. And, you know, when you're my age, 39.
39.
You know, like, maybe it's smart to start having one. But I think when you're 20, 25, and just excited that you got a new compressor, I would not have a B plan. I would not let anybody change my mind that this is what I'm doing.
I love it.
And I would still do it today. If I woke up today and I was 20, I'd start buying gear.
The problem with the B plan is if you had one, you would have taken it probably.
That's right.
Somewhere along the way.
Because at some point in this job that we have, if you've got a B plan in place, there's going to be a time in your career where it's going to pay a fuckload more than you're making now. You know what I mean? Like, and if you've got a B plan, you're going to take it because, you know, like, I don't want to speak for you, but there were 4 or 5 entire years of my life in this town where it was like, hey, buddy, you remember that $20 you borrowed from me yesterday? Man, I need that back. I mean, literally, you know what I mean? And granted, I was eating ramen noodles, but I had a pair of Neve 1073. It wasn't like I was like, you know, I mean, it was like.
But you're eating the ramen noodle, but looking at the 1073.
Totally. That's where I got my sustenance, looking at the 1073s,
yeah, right, exactly.
You know. But but it's like that, you know. I mean, I feel like sometimes it's just having a B plan will give you an easy way out on the misery that you're in the middle of.
Oh man, there was plenty of times for me where if I got paid in cash for something, I would just go squirrel it away. And then I knew that, like, if I needed to go do something special with my daughter when she was little,
totally, I
just pull $120 out. And I'm like, this is our spending budget right here, you know?
Totally. And like, I mean, you can probably attest to that same question you're asking me, you know, like, it's better now than it probably was at darker times on this journey that we've both been on, you know, like, shit, dude, it's just, I'm so glad that we're both here and still here. That's making it in the music industry.
Man.
That is making it. It's not getting a Bentley and having a helicopter. It's still working in the music industry after 20 years.
Yeah.
I would have never thought that I'd make it this far, honestly.
I don't know if you feel the same way about this. I'm going to guess that you probably do. But when I thought about, like, Lidge, if you could do anything you want, what would that be? I had to think hard about it. And then my answer was like, I would spend all day in the studio making music with friends. That's it. That sums it up. You know,
that's what we do.
If I had more money, I'd just try and do more of that.
That's right. If I had more money, I would just buy my friends more things because, like, we've already got the studio. I mean, it's not like I'm going to rip this place down and build a 100 square foot bigger version of it. You know what I mean? Like, that's just what it is, man. I think if somebody handed you $100 million, you'd keep making records. And I think the same thing about myself, you know, like, I mean, fuck, $100 million is a lot of money. I mean, I keep.
All right, man. On that note, dude, Thank you so much for being on Recording Studio Rockstars with us. Totally awesome hang. Let the Rockstars know where they can find you online. Where should they go check out all your jams?
Sure. I mean, I got a website my wife made that's state of the art. I mean, it's not state of the art. EricMasseNashville.com. And then I've got an Instagram that is hello_I_Eric.
Give us the spelling so we don't spell it wrong.
EricMasse. Oh, hello.
ERIC. No,
ERIC.
not that far. Yeah. MASSE.
Yeah, MASSE.
Okay, cool.
Yep, Eric Masse.
Awesome, dude. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Thank you.
Rockstars, a reminder that we got links to what we're talking about in the show notes. Go check out Eric's records. I've got a playlist there. You can check out the videos and hear these records. And we will see you guys in the next episode.
That was a lot of fun.
The studio, dude. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio. Just look for the link in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our amazing sponsors who help make this episode possible. OWC, Jay-Z Microphones, PreSonus, Spectra 1964, and API Audio. You will find links to all these wonderful sponsors in our show notes. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.